Welcome to another episode of Inspiring Herstory. Before we get started, I will warn you that today's conversation may be a trigger for some listeners. In this episode, we talk about heroin overdoses. We talk about death and suicide. We also speak of the mental health issues in the wake of such a traumatic event. It is my sincere hope that those who listen may know that there is help. You are not alone in your journey, even though that may be how you feel. There are resources and people who have been through this. I'll have a link in the show notes of this podcast where you can find services and people who understand in the deepest way and can offer help. You are not alone. I am Barbara Ann, and this is Inspiring Herstory. Hi, Sammi. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You and I spoke briefly about our conversation today, and I would like to say how much I appreciate your willingness to have this conversation. Where would you like to start today, Sammi?
I'd like to talk about my brother's passing from an overdose when I was growing up. Kind of led to my own mental health struggles.
So that was July of 2007, correct? You were 15?
Yes, I was.
He was 24?
Yes.
What can you tell me about that day?
So that day, it was summer, so, I didn't have a lot going on at the time. I had woken up. I remember I had a hair appointment early that morning that I was going to with my mom and my brother, Jesse. He was getting ready to go to work. He worked in the next town over, and we had all left at the same time, said our byes like usual, just leaving for the day, so saying bye. Throughout the day, I don't really remember what I did after my hair appointment, but it was a pretty normal day. I remember it being after 5 o'clock, and nobody had said anything, but I could tell there was some weird atmosphere in the house. Both of my parents seemed nervous. I wasn't really sure why. I assumed it's because they were probably just waiting for Jesse to get home from work. So I went upstairs. I decided to take a shower. I turned the shower on. I went downstairs for a minute while I was waiting for it to heat up. And I had noticed a cop car had pulled up to the house. In my mind, I was relieved. I was like, oh, they probably, Jesse might have had marijuana on him. Maybe they caught him doing something and they figured they'd just bring him home for my parents to deal with. So my thought was relief. So I went upstairs. I turned the shower off and I just heard this scream from my mom. I heard yelling. So I came downstairs and there was an officer in our doorway and my mom was just sobbing. I looked over at my dad. He was standing up against the wall, like not facing anybody. He just had his head pressed against the wall, not talking. I had asked my parents a few times, what's going on? And they're not answering me because they're obviously visibly upset. And so I asked the officer, I was like, what's going on? Can you tell me what's happening? And he said, you should wait for your mom to tell you. And so my mom finally said, Jesse died. And I had known what the cause was. I knew that it was from a heroin overdose. So I went outside and I started calling my boyfriend at the time. I didn't know what to do. I was crying. I just called him. And my oldest brother, he's 12 years older than me, so he was a little under 30 at the time. He had rushed over, came into the backyard. I remember he threw his keys on the ground and he just goes, damn it, and he started crying. And that was the beginning to not a very good summer.
So this I won't say it didn't come as a surprise, but this was a pattern that you had seen with him as far as the overdosing. Is that correct?
Yes, so it wasn't a surprise. I had found out, so that was July. I had found out in the September before when I had started high school that he did have a drug problem because I wasn't aware of it before then. So no, it wasn't a surprise. It was a shock, but at the same time, it wasn't.
You said you had witnessed him?
Yes, I had witnessed him overdose on 2 different occasions. That was why I found out that he did have a problem. He had overdosed in the house. His door was locked. He wasn't answering. I didn't think anything of it at the time. And then something, I don't know, for some reason I got the feeling I should tell my parents. So I went into the living room and I was like, oh, Jesse has a phone call, but his door's locked and he's not answering. And I just remember they both looked at each other and jumped up, and my dad broke the door down, and I just saw him lying on the floor. But at that time, I didn't know that he, you know,
So these weren't conversations that were in the family. This wasn't happening as far as converse. They were trying to shield you. You think they were just trying to protect you from seeing something that was so.
I think because I was the youngest of three and the only girl. I was the baby of the family, and I was so young. I think I was in fifth grade when this started, so I was
Mhm.
very young. I don't know how you have a conversation with a child that young. So I think it was a little bit of them trying to protect me, and also a little bit they're trying to deal with this awful situation. I think they just had so much going on. I feel like they probably didn't know how to handle explaining it to me. So yeah, I was not aware till that day.
So walk me through what happened between July and December of that year.
So that year, after my brother had passed, we have a huge family. Everybody was over all the time, all day, every day, showing up with food, just really being there for us and really being there for my mom. It was kind of all of a blur. We had a lot of events happen in between then. We had family weddings. We had a cousin who had been diagnosed with childhood cancer right after that. So there's just a lot going on. December of that year rolls around, and my mom and dad decided to have all the pallbearers over from my brother's funeral. Just as a thank you, she gave them a framed picture and a little poem, and I think we had like food and they had drinks. And one of the people that was over was my cousin Jonathan. He was a year older than Jesse, so they were very, very close, best friends forever, very close with our whole family. He was one of the people over that night. I didn't think anything weird was going on that night. Everybody was over. Jonathan had actually called before he was coming over, and he had asked my parents, "Does Sammy want anything on my way over?" And I said, "I want Barks root beer. It's my favorite root beer. It's the only root beer I'll drink." And he gets to the house and he goes, "I went to three different gas stations before I came here because I couldn't find your Barks root beer, and I finally got it. So this better be the best root beer of your life." And I was like, "Okay." And so the next day, it's Christmas time. It was a couple days before Christmas, so I'm home from school. My parents had walked in from work, and it was early in the day, like they should have been at work. And I was like, "What's going on?" Because they looked distraught, and they go, "Jonathan died. There was an accident." And they didn't say anything else. I assumed it meant maybe car accident. I wasn't pressing because they were rushing out the door to get to my aunt's house. So flashbacks to what was going on with Jesse. Same thing. Everybody packs up. They go to my aunt and uncle's house, and me and a bunch of my cousins who are around the same age, we kind of all got shipped somewhere to just be together. And we had found out that he had died by suicide. I forget who told us, but someone spilled the beans to us, and I don't know if anybody else had been exposed to it. That was my first time really hearing of it. I mean, I knew what suicide was, but it wasn't something I thought about daily. So again, that just started another next few months of kind of the same thing that we had gone through that summer.
What was going on in your mind by then?
By then, I had a lot of emotions. I processed my cousin Jonathan's death very differently than I processed Jesse's. Being so much younger than my brothers, they grew up together, my brothers Josh and Jesse, because they are so close in age. I didn't necessarily grow up with them. They were done kind of growing up by the time I was around. And once I'm old enough to kind of know what's going on and be aware, Jesse's in and out of rehabs. And even before that, they're off with their friends. I didn't get the chance to be super close with him yet. But Jonathan, he was always close with Jesse and always around, and especially after he died. He was always over checking on us, like checking on me. So I got to be very close with him. And when he died, I feel like it hit me sooner in a way because he was someone that I saw and got to talk to a lot more. So yeah, I processed his death very differently than my brother's. It took me a very long time, and I'm still working through it dealing with my brother's death.
I know that there are some dark thoughts. I know that you go into a world that if you're not there, you don't understand, and even being there, you don't understand. Tell me the things that were going on in your head.
I was still young at the time. Jesse When he died, I was 15. A few months later, I'm 16. I'm in high school. So, after they died, it was still very sad. But at the same time, I was still a teenager doing teenager things, hanging out with my friends, going out. So things still, they didn't feel normal, but they were pretty normal for me still as a teenager.
Did you find there was any stigma that attached to you once it was out that your brother had died in that way?
Yes, definitely. People were a little bit more understanding about my cousin ending his life than my brother dying of a drug overdose. And I mean, even, suicide is still very stigmatized, unfortunately. But with the drug overdose, it was definitely different because I would hear things and I would see things. You hear the things people say about people that are addicted to drugs. I even had teachers at school that I would like hear. I would have friends come up to me and be like, "Oh, this teacher was talking bad about your family, like saying things about your family." And I'm like, we have such a normal family and this awful thing happened. I feel like people have an image of their mind when they think of someone that's a drug addict.
You think that people have an idea as far as their upbringing and their lack of cleanliness, things
Yes.
like that?
Yes, people have these very stereotypical thoughts and our family was just I mean no family's normal, but I mean our family was very normal.
Mom and dad worked and you guys had a great upbringing and you were a
Yeah,
good kid, you had good grades,
exactly. We all
but what people were thinking was completely different. Probably unsupportive parents, kids got to do what they wanted to do, there was no discipline, there was no expectations.
which was far from it. My parents definitely disciplined us. We were not,
Mhm.
it was not a household where we could just run around and do whatever we wanted. But at the same time, like, you're teenagers, you're going to lie to your parents and you're going to go out and do
Right.
what you want to do. So
So did anybody actually come out and say something derogatory, or it was all under secret that you heard about?
I had people that would tell me that they heard teachers saying things. I did have one class that I was in that the teacher did not realize who I was. They didn't make the connection that Jesse was my brother. And he was making some comments saying awful things about drug addicts. And I was just sitting there. I had two friends in the class, and they were both watching me because I'm sitting there trying not to cry.
And you didn't speak up?
I didn't speak up. I was too afraid to because it was the teacher, and I didn't want to talk back or interrupt. So one of my friends goes, "Can Sammy go to the bathroom?" She just asked for me. And we all went out into the hallway. I remember I went to my guidance counselor's office. I was very close with him and I just sat in the office and cried. I think he must have had a talk with the teacher after, but that was my only experience, like to my face.
I know things went downhill for you mentally. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that?
Yeah. So my senior year of high school, it was the beginning of the year, a couple months before I turned 18. I had started getting panic attacks just out of nowhere. I assumed they were out of nowhere. It was like night and day. I just woke up and started having them.
What did a panic attack look like for you?
I would sit there, my heart would be pounding. I could not catch my breath. I was convinced I was dying. I really thought I was dying. And this would go on for days and then weeks and then months. We'd go to the ER every week, me and my parents, because I'm like, no, this is actually a heart attack. They'd give me some Ativan to calm me down. I would realize it was a panic attack, but the cycle would just continue. Like, you could not convince me that something bad wasn't happening. That caused me to be really depressed. I wasn't leaving my house a lot. I was at home a lot. School was very difficult. I was leaving a lot, just staying at home. It wasn't a great senior year for me. So that's what started that. Things would get better. They'd come and go in waves. I'd feel good for a couple months, and then the panic attacks would come back. The depression would come back. That was started when I was 17, and I'm 30 now. So things got things got really bad before they got better.
Did you get any therapy between, if not between July and December, but from at at any point did you receive any therapy before these panic attacks started?
Yes. So when my brother died, my parents had me start seeing a therapist. I think they probably just thought that was a
The
good,
thing to do?
yeah, which she was so nice. I saw her for a very long time. It was helpful when I did start having mental health issues because she was right there. But at the time, I didn't really know what to talk about with her because it just took me a very long time to process my brother dying. So, and I hadn't had any mental health issues yet. So we didn't have much to talk about. It was kind of me just going there and, talking about regular teenage stuff, maybe things that were annoying me that week. That was my first experience with therapy. Once I started having the panic attacks and the depression, I actually did have things to talk about. So that was helpful. But sometimes the therapy, unfortunately, just isn't enough. I was going to therapy for a few years. I was seeing psychiatrists too, trying different antidepressants. I would try them for a little bit or not at all. When I would try them, I'd get off them. I didn't think that they were going to work. I didn't really want to take them.
Did you feel it was more of a crutch that you needed to deal with it without medication, or was it just because there was such a stigma attached to antidepressants?
I didn't mind the stigma. I've never felt ashamed or anything. That wasn't really the issue. What freaked me out was just thinking, am I going to need these for the rest of my life? I never needed these before, and now all of a sudden I need these to get out of bed in the morning.
And you weren't okay with that?
I wasn't okay with that. I really
Mhm.
just thought I was going to wake up one day and feel better.
So it declined. You ended up being hospitalized. Is that correct?
Yes, so in 2012, I was 20. It had gotten bad again. I could feel myself doing less and less. I wasn't seeing my friends as much. I was lying and making up excuses why I couldn't see them. Even my family, like I wasn't seeing them much other than, my parents who I lived in my house with. I'd really just see them and my boyfriend at the time. And I went to my therapist, my appointment that week, and I told her, I was like, I have a plan. I know what it is and I'm going to do it, and I don't think I want to do it. So that's why I'm telling you. But if I'm alone, I will probably do it. So my mom happened to be in the parking lot waiting for me because that was the other thing. I wouldn't drive anywhere by myself. I was too afraid to be alone. So we called her in and I told her what I wanted to do. She was obviously very upset about it. That's when they decided I needed to go to the hospital. So it was a voluntary hospitalization. We went, packed up my things. They gave us a list of things I could take. I didn't realize all of the things they don't let you take when you're admitted to the psychiatric unit. You couldn't have phones, they searched you. We went there, we got admitted late. It was after midnight. I don't know how long they wanted me to stay there. It was definitely longer than I actually was there. I was there for probably maybe 4 or 5 days.
What did you do while you were in the hospital? What was the process for you? Did they come in and try to talk to you? What was the process?
The first day I was there was a lot of crying. I cried. Even though I agreed to go there, I decided I did not want to be there anymore. I didn't want to leave my room. They convinced me to leave my room. The staff was very nice that worked there, the nurses. What you would do is you'd wake up in the morning, you'd have group therapy, you'd talk about why you were there, kind of meet the other people that were on the floor. You'd have individual therapy while you were there, you'd meet with the doctors. I think because I knew once I was there I couldn't leave, and that freaked me out. So
The
once,
lack of control?
yes, the lack of
Yeah.
control. I definitely don't like being in not having control. So
Right.
you could have visiting hours. So once a day for an hour, maybe you could have 2 or 3 visitors. So that next day, my parents came back and I begged them to take me home. I was crying. My mom was a lot stronger. She was like, you have to stay, you have to stay. My dad, I knew I could probably get to him. I think he was about ready to take me out of there. And my mom's like, we can't.
Right.
She told us she's going to do this thing. We can't take her home, which was a good thing that they didn't. But at the time, I was so mad. I was like, how could you guys leave me in here?
But now you understand.
Yeah, I understand
Yeah.
that they had to. I would have done the same thing if I had kids. But, at the time, I was like, I can't believe I'm in here.
So you would get up in the morning, you do the group therapy. Day 2, you had visitors. Did you leave after day 4 willingly? Did they tell you it was time to go? Did they tell you you shouldn't go? What did that look like?
It was willingly because I had been begging to leave for days. I technically got kicked out. The doctor, me and her didn't really get along. I had heard from other people she didn't have the best bedside manner, which I quickly found out that she didn't.
Okay.
I think I just got dealt a bad hand with who was my doctor. She was just not telling, she was telling me things that I feel like you probably shouldn't tell someone that's in an inpatient psychiatric unit for, a suicide attempt.
Like what? Let's go there.
So I struggle with OCD. I have for 10 years. I have a very hard time taking medicines, trying new foods. It's this whole thing. I get very nervous that something bad is going to happen to me, that I'm going to have a reaction to something. It's a whole long thing that I have to deal with.
Is it a fear of death?
I think because when my panic attacks first started, I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I think that stemmed into turning into other things. Oh, when
Okay.
people have allergic reactions, they can't breathe. What if I try this food or I try this medicine and I have a reaction to something and I can't breathe?
Your doctor wasn't understanding with that?
So, I didn't tell her that exactly. I That was one thing that I was very embarrassed about for a long time, was this phobia that I have. I don't talk about it much to people except for a select few. So I just told her I didn't want to take the medicine. I didn't really give a reason. I probably just said that I didn't think I needed it. She told me I was psychotic. What kind of person doesn't want to take medicine? She was using some pretty harsh words.
Sounds like she shouldn't have been there.
No, I was getting so upset, and then I started getting nervous. I was like, am I psychotic? What does that even mean to be psychotic?
So
And
now you were second guessing everything.
yeah, I was really nervous, and the the few nurses that were there, they agreed with me. They were like, she shouldn't be talking to you like that.
So there was no option to change doctors? There was no option to tell someone that was higher up?
I don't think there was. If there was, I probably would have been too afraid to do it. So I wasn't taking my medicine. She said there's nothing else they could do for me. She's like, you're gonna get what you want. I'm discharging you. I was thrilled. I wasn't thrilled how it happened, but I was just, yay, I get to go home. Great. And I think my mom was a little upset because I think she knew you shouldn't be coming home yet, but she wasn't going to say no.
What happened then?
Things were surprisingly good for a little bit after that. I think maybe because, like I had said before, it would come and go in waves. And I think just from being out of there, I was in a good wave. Maybe I started seeing people a little bit more.
Did you find that your mom and your dad were watching you a little closer?
Yeah, I think the whole time that I lived at home, I think they were. I think they worried about me a lot, and I think they probably had PTSD from my brother,
Right.
and then they're dealing with me, who I have all my stuff now too, all my mental health issues that I was dealing with. So I think they were probably on very high alert. Not that they wouldn't have been anyway, but after everything with my brother, I mean, who wouldn't be?
Right. So you came home, things were well.
Yeah, things were a little bit better. There weren't any incidents like that again. I stopped going to therapy. I was like, I don't need it anymore. I can do this. I don't need to do meds, and I don't need to do therapy. It'll be fine.
What
Um,
did you use as a method to help cope? Did you write? Did you skate? There's a million things that people use. Working out. What did you use?
so I actually journaled when I was in the hospital. They gave us all journals, and I wrote a lot of things down in there. That helped. I didn't continue it when I left because, again, I thought I was better. I didn't think that I needed this coping. I would go in periods of time where I would go out and party and I would drink, not excessively, but I would drink and I would get drunk and I would feel good. And I'm like, this feels nice. This is good. I'm going to keep doing this. So it would just be the weekends. I'd go out and party with my friends. I'd feel good and I would keep doing that for weekends. And then I'd get to a point where I didn't feel good again and I was having those thoughts again. So I stopped. I stopped seeing my friends. I stopped doing anything that I liked doing. I would be at home. I wouldn't want to leave the house.
Who noticed that?
I think my parents did because they had a talk with me one night. I didn't have a car because I had gotten in a car accident, and they're like, we'll get a new car. And then they stopped saying that we were going to get a car. And I'm like, how am I supposed to go around anywhere if I don't have a car? And they kind of just put it bluntly, and they're like, you are not leaving the house. Why are we going to get you a car if you're not leaving the house? And then it kind of just hit me, and I'm like, why do I need a car? And I just started thinking, I'm not leaving the house. At this point, I had turned 21. I'm like, I'm 21 years old. I'm not doing the things that I want to be doing. I don't like the person that I am right now. I'm lying to people about how I'm doing. And then I'm lying to people because I don't want to see them. I'm in and out of school because, I'm so depressed. I can't keep up with my classes. It just kind of hit me all of a sudden. I was like, what am I doing with my life?
So what happened?
So I had broken up with my boyfriend at the time. I had realized that, and not that this was his fault, but he definitely enabled me. It
Right.
was easy for me to get him to let me just kind of sit around and be depressed. And I'm like, this isn't something that's going to change. So I need to break up with him. So I did that. I had started dating someone else, and he's my husband now, actually. I really, really liked this person. And I was like, there's no way they're going to stay with me if I continue to live like I am. So, I mean, I don't want to say I only started to change because of him. I want to say it was for myself too, but
Him being in the picture helped you.
it definitely helped. It definitely helped. And he really had, everything together. I mean, he was just a normal 20-year-old going to school, hanging out with his friends. And I'm like, I want to be doing that. I want to finish school. I want to hang out with my friends. And I want to not be living in my parents' house forever and relying on them for things. And I want to stop, letting my anxiety and my depression ruin my life.
What are you doing now to manage that?
All of that was back in the early 2010s. It's still a struggle for me sometimes. And by sometimes, actually, I mean a lot of the time. It just looks different. I think I've taken more responsibility for myself. I think too, I would look back at my anxiety and depression and I would be like, well, I can't do anything because I have this, so I'm not going to try. It's just going to get in the way. So now I look at it like I don't want to let it get in the way. Like maybe there's going to be some days where I'm feeling bad, but I don't want this to affect my entire life. I've felt like I've affected for so long and I just missed out on so many things. So now, I go to therapy still. It's very helpful. I take care of myself a lot better than I used to. Kind of all the things that you see people talk about: eating better, sleeping better, exercising. I try to do those things because I think that they do help to an extent in a combination with therapy. And, I don't think it's just one specific thing.
We're going to go back a little bit. When you were in those dark places,
Mm-hmm.
how scared were you knowing that you were having these thoughts and they were such visceral thoughts that you could actually see yourself completing that?
I was very scared. It was a very weird feeling because it was something I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do it, and I was afraid if I was actually going to do it or not.
Were
Um,
you thinking about it because you were so sad, or were you thinking about it because you didn't know what else to do?
my anxiety was so exhausting to me that it made me so just numb and depressed that I thought that was the only thing I could do to stop myself from feeling this way.
And when those thoughts were happening, when you were really into that, did the thought of how your family would react, did that ever occur to you?
Yes, every time that was very hard for me. I would have these thoughts and then I'd be like, I can't do this to my family, especially after what happened with, Jesse and Jonathan. So I would really just toggle between these two ideas and I would sit here and think about myself. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. It should matter what I want. And then the next minute I'd be like, no, I have a family that loves me and my friends, and I can't do that to them. So those thoughts were also exhausting. It just really got to be too much.
So it was a huge mental battle.
Yes, for a while. And I don't know what made me tell my therapist, but I just decided to blurt it out, and I'm very glad that I did. Don't know what would have happened if I didn't tell her and they didn't intervene.
Do you or did you and your family at any time talk about it after? Was
Um,
this a discussion that you ever held? Because I'm sure as a mom, I would want to know why. I mean, I would know the basics, with all the loss and the sadness that comes with that and that heaviness. But did she ever ask you why?
we talked about it that day in therapy because I remember my therapist wanting me to tell my mom why. None of it was a surprise to her, though. I mean, she had been seeing me live the way I was living every day. for a few years, so I don't think it was a shock. But after I got out of the hospital, I was just so hell bent on being like, I'm fine, I'm fine. I don't need anything. I don't need you guys to do anything for me. And we just didn't talk about it much.
And you genuinely thought you were fine, or did what, as you were saying that, in the somewhere in some crevice of your brain, you were thinking, I'm really not okay, and I just need the right person to tell me that you're not okay? Did you ever have that in your head?
I think at first I really did think it was going to be okay. I, for a really, really long time, which I think is the reason that it took me so long to get help, was I really thought I was going to wake up one day and just be better. Because in my mind, I was fine my whole life. And then I woke up one day and just started having anxiety out of
Mhm.
nowhere. So I would think, okay, well, it just showed up out of nowhere. So obviously it's going to go out of, it's going to go away on its own. I'm just going to wake up and I'm just going to wait for that day to happen. I learned that that's unfortunately not how that works. It's not just going to go away on its own.
Tell me about your husband. That's when you met him, and you realized that, hey, I want to pull myself out, not because of him, obviously, because you were already in that place where you wanted to improve based on what you said, with the decision to break up with that one guy and start living again. What's his name, your husband?
Gianni.
Gianni. So when Gianni met you, how long was it before you started telling him and being honest with him about where you were mentally and why?
So we had already known each other. We went to high school together. He knew a little bit somehow. We weren't super close or anything, but we had reconnected because we had mutual friends. And
Mhm.
I'm assuming maybe one of my friends had mentioned that I had dealt with anxiety or depression. None of them really knew the extent of it, so he couldn't have known much. But I remember him telling me, yeah, I kind of knew you had some of that stuff going on. That was really the extent of it. When you date someone and time passes, you divulge more and more information to them about personal things that maybe you wouldn't bring up on a first date. I don't really remember the how or when, but he became the person that he knows it all. He knows everything. Every bad thought that I've had, every struggle that I've had, he knows it all.
What would you tell someone who may be going through this? What would you say to them at this point?
First, what I wish someone would tell me is that it definitely does not go away on its own. You definitely do need to seek help, and that help looks different for everybody. I've heard so many suggestions from people over the years where they might come from good places, but maybe for one person they can have more natural healing practices, such as I'm just going to wake up, I'm going to journal, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to eat well, and that's going to be good for me and my mental health. Or you could have someone that, no, I do need meds. I need to be on those medications to make my brain work the way that it should be. And it's never just one thing that's going to work. That was the other thing. I always thought there was just a one size fits all cure and that was all I was going to need. But a lot of people do need the therapy in combination with the meds or just changing certain lifestyles. So I think that's a big part of it, is realizing you're not just going to find one thing that's going to fix you, and it's not going to be overnight. It's something that you have to work at all the time. But my life looks a lot better than it did, 10 years ago. It was actually 10 years ago this month that I was hospitalized. So my life does look a lot better than it did that at that point.
Did your friends ever mention, because you said that and I get it with anxiety, that you make plans and it sounds great, and then when the time comes, you're like, oh, I'm bailing because I just can't. Did you find that your friends kind of helped you through these? Because I'm sure that they knew about your brother, and I'm sure they knew about your cousin, and I'm sure that they knew I guess there's an unspoken boundary sometimes that people don't want to barge, or they don't want to, make you matter by saying, hey, I'm noticing that you're not hanging with us. And did you find that you had a group of people, or at least one person, that helped you through that or called you out on it?
So I never had friends that called me out. I definitely had family members that called me out, but I never had friends that called me out. I definitely lost some really good friends. My friends, I never really went into great detail. All my, anyone that's close with me knows I I have anxiety and depression. And sometimes I think that might just look like to them, oh, well, yeah, a lot of people, get a little anxious or a little depressed. I don't think all of them know the extent to how it's affected my life, especially in addition to my OCD, just how it kind of has bled into a lot of different things in my life. I do have some really, really good close friends that I know I can talk to them about this stuff, and I don't expect them to have answers or advice for me. But if I'm out somewhere with my friends and I'm feeling anxious, I know I can say to them, hey, can we go outside for a minute? Like, I need to step back. Or even when I was in the hospital, I told two of my friends, I didn't tell anybody else. I just told them. I didn't want them to be like, why isn't she answering the phone? Because you can't have your phones in the hospital. So yeah, I didn't have anybody that called me out, but they're always there for me. I feel bad, back then because I was constantly just canceling plans and, giving different reasons. I never really wanted to sit there and be like, I'm anxious, I don't want to come out, because I
Right.
felt like maybe they wouldn't understand or they'd get annoyed or they'd get tired of hearing it. So, I'd use my parents a lot. I'd be like, oh, sorry, my parents won't let me come out, even though I'm like 20 years old. I always felt bad about doing that. I'd wish that I had been more honest, but that's just how I chose to handle it for some reason.
I've always said that we do the best we can in the circumstances that we're in at that moment. And if we didn't second guess or say, oh, I shoulda, I coulda, I woulda, then we're not trying to grow. So we did what we did or
Mhm.
didn't do at any time at that moment because that was the best decision at that moment. And it may be a different decision this time, but that moment was the best decision for you.
Yeah.
Anxiety is something that I think there's so many versions of that for so many people. And I do believe that with mental health, that you find that one bleeds into the other, and you find that's the case with many. I'm not going to say every, but we have in my direct family, I have a sister who's schizophrenic, and initially we were like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why, what do we didn't understand it. And it looks different for every single person in this world, and so does suicide and how it affects someone. And I think that the stigmas that we worry about of what are people going to think. Oh my god, there's so many thoughts that go through someone's head if you're a survivor of someone who has taken their own life.
Mhm.
And those thoughts are so normal, even though they're dark. And they're you think them and you go, oh my God, if someone knew that I had that thought, they'd think less of me, or they'd hate me, or they'd think I was a terrible person. And the reality is that we've all had those thoughts. And it's what you do with those thoughts that creates the person you are. And you didn't, even though you were in a place that you very easily could have, you didn't do what you had a plan to do. For that, you may not feel like a bigger person. I don't even know what that looks like as a bigger person, but you knew to seek help because there's so many that can't. For some reason, they can't. They don't, they won't, they can't. And it doesn't usually end well for anybody. I can't thank you enough for you agreeing to talk to me, because it's hard to talk about things. I guess in this age, I guess we can talk about more things and it's more accepted. But I think I explained it to you and everyone, that the whole point of these podcasts is to talk about real life and how, even if it's a minute by minute struggle or a day by day struggle, the struggle doesn't end. There's always something that we're thinking about or struggling with. I think it's awesome that you agreed to talk. And I hope that someone out there realizes that A, there's hope, B, there's help, and C, we can get through this. I don't know anybody right now, but I'll bet I do, you know? And I think that it's so hard, especially with where we're at in society, to feel as though you matter. And you do, you do. I think your story is amazing. It's sad, but it's amazing. For someone like you or anyone else to go through 2 suicides in 1 year and come out on the other side after going through and having those thoughts that you had, I can't fathom that. I can't. We have our struggles, but you've had some pretty intense ones, and you probably still have them in your head.
Definitely a bigger sense of community around that too. I'm not sure about, because I was so young when I lost my brother and my cousin. But I started volunteering for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention a few years ago. That has been a huge help. There's just so many resources for people, whether you're someone that struggles with mental health or, you've lost someone to suicide. there's just there's so much out there that people are more aware of. So that's kind of why I volunteer with them. I've kind of leaned more towards that than towards the substance abuse because I haven't myself struggled with substance abuse, but I feel like maybe my efforts can go further suicide prevention since it's something that I've struggled with myself. So there's just so much out there now that I feel like people weren't aware of back then. I got an email from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention because we had done a walk that year. They do a walk every year. They're called Out of the Darkness walks. They raise awareness, they raise funds for research. And I had gotten an email saying we're having a volunteer night, come down. It was just a generic email that went out to a bunch of people, and I decided to go by myself. I just went.
Yeah. And that's another component that is so profound that you've reached out to other people to see if you could help them. Because I firmly believe, and I've said this so many times, people are probably tired of hearing it. If you haven't been there, you cannot possibly understand. And you can empathize, you can sympathize, you can feel bad, you can do everything in your power and, extend your heart. When someone's been through a similar experience, there is something so profound about that. You turned something so terrible, so mentally wrenching and emotionally wrenching into, wow, that sucked. How can I help you?
Yeah.
Because I was there. And to me, that just speaks volumes without having to say anything at all. So that's awesome, Sammi. That is very awesome. I think that's admirable. Not everybody can do that. One, you did an amazing thing by saying, I'm not okay. I need to do something different. And you did. And now you're married and it's not that you're not without struggle, because I know you are. You're able to channel that in a direction that may help someone either not do that or help them through somebody who did in their life, And so that's awesome. You're a light, you're a beacon of light for someone. Whether you ever know that someone or not, just know that every single person in this world influences or can possibly change the direction that someone will go simply by being you. You're at least trying to help others work through that. And that's, I commend you for that. So I thank you for your time. Time is a rare commodity, and I thank you very, very much for the conversation. And is there a website or a group that we can attach to this podcast? You did mention the walk, which you said was Out of the Darkness, was it?
Yep. So they're Out of the Darkness walks. You can go to afsp.org. They do community walks. They're all over the country. Our local one is in Springfield. It's the Springfield chapter, but it's in Agawam.
Okay.
So, and they have them out in Boston. They have them all over the place. And they also have campus walks for colleges when, school's in session. But anything that anybody could need, it's at afsp.org. There's just so much information there for anybody that could need it.
Okay. I will link that, and that will also, hopefully somebody will hear that needs it. There's also a suicide hotline.
800-273-8255.
And that's a 24-hour hotline for suicide prevention. Is that correct?
Yes, but they just passed. So 988 is going to be the 3-digit number that you can call when you are in crisis. So it starts in July. July 16th is when it's supposed to start. So the current number is the longer one that I just said.
Okay, but 988 will be the 3-digit number starting July 16th. So again, Sammi, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me, and I wish you all of the best.
Thank you for having me.
If you or someone you know is considering suicide, please know that there is help. You are not alone.